just going to go ahead and just start with Caleb here, and he's again he's an independent journalist, and he's going to be able to give us a political analysis of what came down from his perspective in Venezuela.
If it's okay with everyone, I'll stand up. I guess when I begin my presentation, I guess I have to begin by clearing something up. Based on what has been said in the U.S. media and a lot of what's even been said on the internet in some of the left-wing circles, I feel a need to kind of give a disclaimer. If you were coming here tonight with the expectation that I was going to get up and say that the Bolivarian revolution has been defeated, that BP and Shell are going to take control of the oil resources there, that this beautiful uprising for democracy is done and it's finished. If you were coming here expecting me to talk that way, you came to the wrong meeting. You absolutely came to the wrong meeting. Now, the U.S. press is really good at misreading, miscalculating, and mispredicting events in Venezuela. After Chavez tried to take power in 1992, they said he's done. They said we'll never hear from him again. After he was elected president in 1999, they said, well, he's not going to do much. We're not going to hear much from him. After the 2002 coup attempt, when the CIA worked with the Venezuelan oligarchy to overthrow the democratically elected president, they said, that's it. Bolivarianism is finished. After they announced the goal of building 21st century socialism, they said, oh, he's gone too far. It's all over. In the lead up to each and every election where Chavez and the United Socialist Party or Maduro was elected by the people, they proclaimed that the revolution was doomed. And each time, they have been wrong. And after Chavez's death, again, they said, this is all over. But then the people poured out and they voted for Nicolas Maduro to continue the revolutionary process. The experts on CNN, in the New York Times, on Fox News, they've all been to Harvard and Yale. They're considered the experts in their field. But when it comes to understanding Venezuela and predicting what happens in its politics, they have an awful, awful track record. And the events that I witnessed in Caracas just perfectly illustrate what the whole world should know about the different political forces in Venezuela. In Venezuela this December, the country had the first peaceful election in 16 years. In the last 16 years, every time Chavez or Maduro or the United Socialist Party has been victorious at the polls, with the Carter Center and the United Nations and the Organization for American States confirming that that was the real result, the opposition has decided to go on the attack. In 2014, when Maduro was elected president, the opposition killed 43 people. They strung wires across intersections. They bombed healthcare clinics and buses. And now, now that there were some real defeats for the Bolivarian movement at the polls, all of a sudden there was peace. So next time you turn on Fox News or you turn on MSNBC and they start talking about Chavez the dictator, think about where the violence in Venezuelan society is really coming from and what the source of this violence is. Who is carrying out this violence? Now, the opposition, they call themselves the Democratic Roundtable, the MUD, M-U-D. Their name is MUD as far as I'm concerned. They did score some real victories at the polls, but it's not over. I guess I have to explain first, before I get into what happened, I have to explain what did not happen. The Bolivarian movement was not defeated. The presidency, the military, the Supreme Court is still in the hands of the United Socialist Party. Furthermore, there is a huge structure of communes, labor unions, people's assemblies, militias, student associations, artistic collectives, farm cooperatives, and just a huge intricate structure of the Bolivarian movement that is aligned with President Maduro and has not given up. And secondly, I want to make this overwhelmingly clear, this is very important. This was not a rejection of socialism by the Venezuelan people. I spoke to many people who were campaigning for the opposition and supporting the opposition, and they didn't say, I hate Chavez. They didn't say, I hate Bolivarianism. They didn't say, I want free market capitalism. No, they had frustrations about how the revolution was being carried out. They felt like there was a problem of corruption. They felt like certain practices within the government were problematic. The majority of the people who voted for the MUD have nothing in common with the racist, extremist bourgeois elements that run that organization. The opposition in Venezuela has tried to change its face. That's an important point. And the people who voted for the MUD, they called it a voto castigo, or a punishment vote. They wanted to tell the leaders of the patriotic poll that they were upset with certain government policies. And, like I said, the opposition has tried to change its face. The leader of the MUD is Henrique Capriles. Capriles, unlike previous leaders of the Venezuelan opposition, he doesn't run around extolling the greatness of U.S. imperialism. He doesn't call the poor people monkeys. He doesn't pretend. He actually pretends to be concerned about the economic problems in the country. He actually says he's a socialist also. He tries to act as if he, not Maduro, is the true inheritor of the Chavez legacy. And Capriles is lying. It's no secret that he's an agent. He's getting money from the banking elites in the U.S., the oil cartels, the weapons manufacturers. The strategy being utilized at this moment to attack the people of Venezuela and try to halt their revolution and take the country back for the Wall Street oil corporations, it's been changed. They aren't using the neocon strategy of direct attacks, coups, and open assaults. It's not Bush and the Koch brothers who are directing the attacks currently on the Bolivarian Revolution. The sinister group of billionaires that are calling the shots and directing the assaults on the Bolivarian movement are led by a family named Rockefeller. ExxonMobil, the biggest Wall Street oil corporation, is heavily invested in a country called Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, this is one of these human rights-loving, democratic, free societies, right? Saudi Arabia. And ExxonMobil basically controls the oil of Saudi Arabia, along with Chevron and BP. And they are basically ordering the Saudi monarchy to pump oil out onto the international market. Millions of barrels, tens of millions of barrels of oil every day are being churned out onto the market, and it's driving the price of oil lower than ever. The Saudis are losing money in this process. They've got big internal problems with unemployment and unrest. They actually started off the year by executing 47 people. And they keep churning out oil onto the markets, and they're not doing this because they're stupid. They're not just slitting their own wrists. They're being ordered by their bosses at ExxonMobil to do what they're doing. The Rockefeller family that controls ExxonMobil is also one of the primary backers and funders of the Council on Foreign Relations. They have control over the Ford Foundation and George Soros networks, the same forces that are here in the U.S. trying to take over and control the Black Lives Matter movement and restrain it. They're also working very hard, coordinating with the oil companies to try and sabotage the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela. They're funding within Venezuela an apparatus of professional agitators, bomb throwers, and troublemakers within Venezuela. And they're doing the same thing, I must add, in Iran and in Russia. They hope that they can cash-starve these governments, foment unrest, and eventually take over. I saw with my own eyes how the oil price drop has been affecting the daily life of people in Venezuela. There were shortages of necessary household items like toilet paper. Food wasn't being delivered. Massive inflation took place. There were lines outside the ATMs every morning. This was economic warfare being waged against the Bolivarian Revolution by the United States, by the CIA, and by the Rockefellers. But despite all this, and it's important to keep this in mind, 42% of the people still voted for the Bolivarian Revolution. I remember on election day, there was this group of bikers, people on motorcycles, that were just driving through their neighborhood, waving the flag of the United Socialist Party, telling people to go out and vote. There's a huge apparatus within Venezuela that still supports the elections. And if you go to these neighborhoods in central Caracas, the strongholds of the Bolivarian movement, you ask these people, why do you still vote for the United Socialist Party when there's all this trouble getting toilet paper? And you know what they do? They point out the window. And they say, this road out here, this paved road, used to be made out of dirt. They say, look at this, we got cooking gas now. We never had that before. They said, the electricity comes on all the time. We have regular electricity. They said they didn't have any of this. They have health care clinics where people can go and get medical care with Cuban doctors. There were a whole bunch of people prior to the Bolivarian process who were actually physically blind because of poverty-related illnesses. And one of the first things they did, they had this program curing the blindness of the people. Literacy programs, adult education, teaching people how to read. In one neighborhood, they told us how under the old regime that they had to, if they wanted the electricity to work regularly, if they wanted people to come pick up the garbage, they'd have to take a bunch of old tires and put them in the middle of the street and pour gasoline on them and light them on fire to get the attention of the old regime so that maybe someone would come and pick up their garbage. It's nothing like it was before. I went to Comuna Pinal, the Beehive Commune, one of the collective cities that has been constructed by the revolution. In this center, there are 1,400 families who live together in these apartment buildings. They've got pictures of Che Guevara and Mao Zedong, and they care for each other, and they feed each other, and they look after each other. And they're communists. Sure, they're communists, but they're Christians. They talk about the Jesus Christ who died for the oppressed. They raise their fists in the air and talk about how they are ready to give their lives and become martyrs for the revolution. This is a solid core. This is a block. This is a structure within Venezuelan society that cannot be pulled apart. No election is going to break them down, and frankly, I don't think drones, tanks, weapons, or anything else can do that either. This is something strong, and it can't be defeated. I know one thing that they've really invested a lot in Venezuela is media. We visited radio stations, TV networks that have been funded by the government, allowing the people to compete with this private media that's opposed to the Bolivarian process. Just a beautiful, beautiful network of community-controlled radio stations supporting and defending the revolution. Now, some people predicted after the election results that the right wing, the MOOD, would get in and they would just kind of gradually start to roll back the Bolivarian process. They would just gradually start to undo things. Well, those people were wrong. The first thing the opposition did, the first thing that they did when they took office is they removed not just the picture of Chavez, not just the picture of Maduro, but also the picture of Simón Bolívar, the liberator. Now, that would be, this is an icon in Venezuelan society. This is a hero of Latin America, the fighter for independence. Taking down the picture of Simón Bolívar would be, I think it would be similar to if someone in the U.S. were to take down a picture of Martin Luther King Jr. or take down a statue of Martin Luther King Jr. That's not a political statement. That's an act of war. It's an act of war, and that was the first thing that the opposition did. Now we hear that one of the most beloved journalists, who was a voice defending the revolutionary process, Ricardo de Rendrehelo, has been gunned down in his home and killed. The opposition isn't looking to peacefully transition the country away from socialism. The opposition knows that there is a huge gap between themselves and the people who voted for them. That people voted for them out of frustration, but their intention is to destroy everything that's been happening in Venezuela. And because they know that, they are trying to provoke a confrontation. And right now, Nicolás Maduro is the defender of peace and stability in the country. It's unfortunate. I know there's a misconception a lot of people have. They think that revolutionaries were bomb throwers, were violent. But if anyone who's actually studied revolution, and not seen Hollywood movies about it, but studied actual revolutions that have gone on, knows that revolutionaries in the real world are just advocates of self-defense. They want people to protect themselves. Nicolás Maduro and the Bolivarian Revolution, they're defenders of hungry children. They're defenders of people who've been robbed of housing and an education. And furthermore, they're defenders of democracy against the forces that carry out military coups and try to overthrow the elected governments. Now Maduro has the difficult task of holding Venezuelan society together. I remember on election day, we went to one neighborhood, and on one side there was the PSUV, the Socialist Party, was set up. On the other side was the MOOD, and both sides had speakers set up. They were playing music, and we talked to some of the people from the Socialist Party, and they were saying things like, look at this. Look at this. We're a peaceful democratic society. We're a civilized country. We're playing, they play their music, we play our music, we dance to each other's music. We're competing, we know each other, these are people from our neighborhood, we don't agree, but we get along, we're friendly. Now that is what the forces that control the opposition want to destroy. I wish I'd been prepared for the election results, because I would have had something that I could say to the people who told me that they love socialism, they love Chavez and everything he did for the country, but they mistakenly decided to cast their vote for these forces of evil. I wish I had thought more clearly about what I would say to them. Of course, I didn't know what the election results would be. But if I could go back and do it again, I would say to them, if you look at Venezuela, and you see these highways, and you see these paved roads, and you see these healthcare clinics, and you see this beautiful artwork, and you see, they even had these cable cars that would go up to the mountains. Just so much has been built and constructed in Venezuela. It's all been constructed based on an economy centered around public control of the oil resources. With public control of the natural oil resources, they've been using the oil wealth to develop an independent, vibrant economy for Venezuela. And based on that, they have basically enabled people to have pride in their culture. They've enabled people to just live lives so richer than anything they could have had before. And this is what the opposition is trying to destroy. The Wall Street bankers that control the opposition, they're not trying to destroy the Bolivarian process. They're trying to destroy Venezuela. They're trying to destroy an independent country. We went to one place that was called the Center for African Knowledge. And it was a whole building that had been constructed to raise people in Venezuela's awareness about Africa. And when we talked to people there, one thing that they shared with us was that it wasn't just about Africa, it was about Afro-Venezuelans. And how, since the Bolivarian Revolution began, Afro-Venezuelans have been able to feel pride in who they are. They haven't had to feel ashamed of the fact that they have African heritage in their blood. They've actually been able to be proud that they are from African descent, and they've been welcomed as a sector of Venezuelan society. And I must say that, that if you look at Venezuela and you look at the way they have pride in their culture and their heritage, you see that they have these publicly owned TV networks that have been paid for. It's all a step forward. And the forces in power, the wealthy Wall Street elite, when they see this, they pound their fists with rage. They don't want the Venezuelans to have their own economy. They want them to be good, loyal customers, buying everything from Wall Street and obeying the global financial elite. They don't want them celebrating their vibrant history. They want them watching Kim Kardashian and the New Housewives of New Jersey, or whatever the hell they're called these weeks. They don't want them worshiping Jesus Christ, who they say was the first communist in the world. They want them listening to the sermons of Joel Osteen about how God is going to make you rich. In the Middle East, they use the terrorists and the extremists to create chaos. But if you go to Central America and Latin America, you see the drug cartels and the narcos. They're both running around with U.S.-made weapons, destroying things, making instability, making it so no stable society can emerge. This strategy for spreading chaos and utilizing economic subversion, this Rockefeller, CIA, NGO plot to spread chaos around the world, it may actually not have the long-term effects that they're expecting. Got a couple articles here from the Wall Street Journal. This one here talks about how right now in Houston there's a housing slump because of these low oil prices. This one here talks about how in North Dakota there's a little town called Williston. And Williston had a boom with hydraulic fracking, and people from all over the country were moving to Williston, getting jobs working in fracking, but that's all done now. The boom that happened in this little town in North Dakota has just been wrecked because there's $28 a barrel. It's hurting them. And I know that somewhere Barack Obama is in a meeting with his advisors, and he's saying to all of them, he's saying, let me leave office without everything falling apart. Just let me get out of office before this all goes to hell. That's what he's saying. Because if you look at what's happening on the stock market right now, they'd like to tell you it's all because of China. But the reality is that this oil nonsense can't go on forever. Now, Venezuela is a country that is broken free. And frankly, I don't like to use foul language, but it scares the shit out of them. Just like Iran, just like Russia, just like China, if one country can break free, another country can break free as well. First there was Chavez, then there was Maduro, then there was Correa, then there was Ortega. The world is gradually slipping out of their fingers. Independent economies are emerging. Now, the dedicated core of Chavistas, they're being put to the test right now. They are facing deep challenges to their revolutionary process. And the message that they need to hear from us is that here in the center of the empire, you've got friends in the United States. They need to see that there's plenty of young people who are mad about the fact that they can't get a decent job. And they're thinking about they see the kind of social programs that Maduro has put into effect, giving jobs to people, healthcare and education, and they think that something like that would be good for this country. The Chavistas have got friends in the United States. They need to see that there's a mass movement opposed to police brutality that doesn't just oppose the cops here on the street, but also opposes the CIA, the Pentagon, and all the forces holding back people's movements for independence. Chavistas, you've got friends here in the United States. They need to see that ExxonMobil, BP, and Shell, while they're always pushing for more wars and more attacks, that there's a dedicated movement of people who want to fight for peace. The Chavistas, you've got friends here in the United States. They need to see that whenever these mood opposition forces, these puppets come to New York City, that there's going to be a demonstration against them, and we're going to get up and disrupt their speeches, and we're going to make clear that they're not welcome here in the U.S. We've got to let the world know that Chavistas, you've got friends here in the United States. They need to see that, and they need to understand that not all of us are going to be duped by the racist hate and bigotry coming from figures like Donald Trump, and that we are going to stand side by side with our immigrant brothers and sisters and fight against the big oil cartels that are destroying the world. Chavistas, you've got friends here in the United States. We're all part of one human family, standing against injustice and greed. And the Bolivarian Revolution is an inspiration to all of us. I remember when I was a teenager, I saw Chavez on TV at the UN calling George W. Bush the devil, and I just applauded like you wouldn't believe. That was a great moment. And I feel like every person who was watching their TV set and was cheering for Chavez when he called Bush the devil and was smelling the sulfur, I feel like every one of them has a role to play in solidarity with the Bolivarian revolution. Everyone in this room and everyone who stands against injustice has a contribution to make in defending Venezuela. And so I want everyone in this room to start thinking about what role they have to play in the next few months. Thank you.
Awesome.